Hey guys, this is Jackie from Jack Gets Lost in a Book Hole. So I just realized Valentine's Day is 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks away. So either I need to just do one of these videos about my favorite ships every day, or I can continue it past Valentine's Day. I don't know yet. But this next one I want to talk about is Jane and Rochester from Jane Eyre. I don't have the book anymore. I gave it to my cousin because I thought she might like it. Because, she likes, Pride and Prejudice. So I thought maybe she'd like Jane Eyre, which is a little different. It's more of a gothic romance. But I figured maybe she'll be interested. So if you don't know, if you are like living under a rock and don't know anything about this story, let me give you a rundown of the plot. So Jane Eyre is about this girl named Jane, who is orphaned at the age of 10, and she's forced to live with her aunt and uncle and their kids, her cousins. Unfortunately, the uncle, who is the only one who gives her affection, passes away and dies, and Jane is left to live with her cruel aunt and cousins, who constantly abuse her and bully her. And one day, when her male cousin is harassing her, she defends herself and, attacks him, but her aunt, of course, only sees Jane attacking him. She doesn't see that her son has, hurt Jane. So her aunt decides to send her with Brocklehurst to Lowood School, which is not a great school. They're very abusive there. They use the whip, and they're very harsh in their punishments. And they're not very good as far as, the school itself. Not just how they run things, but just the building is fine, I can't think of the word. They always have cold water, but in the wintertime it freezes up. The food is crap. It's just not a great place. But Brocklehurst, he's deluded in his religious beliefs, and he feels very strongly to the point of psychotic. And very controlling. Unfortunately for Jane, the one consolation she has is at least one of the teachers likes her and respects and admires her and thinks she has a lot of potential, and if she's careful, she can go very far and can survive this school. And she also has a friend in Helen, this little redheaded girl who's always, good, obedient, always trying to follow the rules, and has a lot of faith and very strong spiritualism. Unfortunately, the school typhoid shows up at the school and kills most of the students, including Helen. And and that is very heartbreaking for Jane because that Helen was her only friend. So, but luckily, the one silver lining is that the people who run the school fire Brocklehurst. They demote him to just being the treasurer of the school, but and they improve it. They work on improving it. And Jane stays at the school for several years and eventually becomes a teacher for 2 years. But when she's 18, she decides that she needs to seek a new situation. She needs to go explore the world and experience life beyond Lowood School, because she only has been at Lowood around a bunch of girls, and the only male is Mr. Brocklehurst, and then where her aunt's house is, which I cannot remember what that place is called, with her cousins. So she puts an advertisement in the newspaper, telling of her skills and what she can do. And she receives a response from this woman named Miss Fairfax, who has a little girl that needs a governess, a little French girl. And so Jane decides to become the little girl's governess. But she finds out when she gets there that the master, the one who is her caretaker and takes care of her, rarely comes home. He's always traveling. He's not around that much. So for a while, it's just Jane, the little girl Adele, and the housekeeper and all the other servants. But then one day when she's leaving the house, she meets Rochester on the road, not realizing who he is. And in fact, she kind of scares his horse and forces him to fall, and he ends up falling off his horse and breaking his ankle, and he ends up blaming half joking, half serious, I feel like, blaming Jane for his sprained ankle. So, but eventually Jane and Rochester he invites her to join him and Adele in these private little conversations, and they start talking, and he realizes that Jane is someone that can match his wits. And the two of them over time start to get to know each other, and she becomes infatuated with him and starts to fall in love with him, much to the dismay of the housekeeper, who is like, the two of you are from a different class. You need to be careful. You can't trust Rochester. And eventually Jane finds out that there is a woman that Rochester is thinking about courting, Blanche Ingram. So Rochester leaves to go see Blanche and her family, and he doesn't come back for a while, and so, Jane is trying to be all cool with this and not let it bother her and not get jealous, because she feels like she doesn't have a right to be jealous. And then Rochester comes back with Blanche, and her feelings that she's trying to put away start coming out again. Little does she know, though, that Rochester this whole time is only pretending to court Blanche because he's trying to make her jealous and trying to make Jane jealous. Because she's this young woman who doesn't have any real experiences. I mean, she's only been at her aunt's house in Lowood School. She hasn't been around a lot of men. She's only 18. So, it's clear, of course, you don't find this out until towards later in the book, but you realize he is falling in love with Jane as well. So eventually, Jane is called back to her aunt's house, who is dying, and she finds out that her aunt had kept this letter from her about a long-lost uncle that wants to take Jane in. She kept it from Jane, and she only feels guilty about it now. Not because she cares about Jane, but she just feels guilty and feels that she did a wrongdoing, she was in the wrong here, and that she committed a sin and everything. So she finally tells Jane. So while she was away, Rochester supposedly got engaged to Blanche. So Jane comes back and finds this out and is trying to be, okay with this and not let it bother her, and, to accept the fact that it's never going to happen. And it was ridiculous for her to assume that Rochester would see her as anything but his employee and a governess to his ward. But then Rochester, of course, while the two of them are walking, and he's walking, and she says, okay, you need to help me out, give me references so I can, and help me find a new place to work. But then he's all like, no, I want you to stay because I feel this attachment to you, and I feel like I will break if you leave. And she finally snaps and is like, no, that's not fair. You can't force me to stay. I'm an independent woman. I have a right to leave you. You don't own me or anything. And you're engaged to someone else, so you don't need me to stay. It wouldn't be right for me to stay. But then he confesses his feelings for her, and that he wasn't engaged to Blanche, that he can't stand the woman. But of course, everyone's all, the housekeeper and everyone else is all judging of that relationship. But then I'm going to spoil for everybody, so if you don't want to be spoiled, and if you have not by any chance read the book or seen any of the movie versions, Jane, just as she's getting ready to marry Rochester, she finds out she finds out that he has another wife, a crazy wife, that he keeps locked up in the attic, and that he's still married to. And actually, earlier, while she was still before, the brother of his wife shows up, and he even asks Jane if, would you stay with me and support me and stay loyal to me, even if you found out that I have this deep, dark secret, which he doesn't tell her what it is, of course, at that time. And she admits that she would stay with him, that thinking at the time that, it can't be that bad. And she is forced, even though he's on his knees begging her to stay, she's like, no, I don't want to be your mistress. You're already married. It's not right. and she leaves in the early morning and goes to live with some. And she's found by this young man, this priest and his sisters. They take her in, and the priest is all like, and he's this young guy and everything. He wants to travel the world and spread the word of God, and he offers Jane a proposition of marriage. But there is no love lust between them. She does not want to marry him. She's still in love with Rochester. She can't let him go. She will not marry someone she doesn't love. Because she just sees this guy as like a brother to her, because they become really close. And of course he thinks this is ridiculous, that marriage isn't about love and passion and romance and everything. It's a practical thing to him. So that's what Jane Eyre is about. Like, I probably gave you guys way too many details. I probably could have just summed it up. But I'm not the best at summaries. So what I love about this couple, about Jane and Rochester, is first of all, Jane and Rochester, the two characters are described as being considered unattractive. Like, she's plain looking. She's very plain. She's not well off. She's not, and he's considered he looks like what is considered unattractive. Like, I remember, I don't know where it was, maybe in a discussion of the book. Sometimes, you know how sometimes those books have discussion questions in the back, and discussions with the author and stuff. Well, I think it might have been in there, or it might have been something that was said in the book, but I do know that back then, the Grecian beauty, like someone who was pale and blonde, was considered the most attractive. But Rochester was well off, so, you know, Blanche wants to marry him because she was financially not in a good situation. She needed to marry a rich man. But Jane and Rochester's love and their romance is based on emotional attraction and mental attraction. They are on equal footing. It's not just about attractiveness. It's just not about looks in their marriage. Although I feel like when you fall in love with someone, even if to the world they're not pretty, they're not handsome or good looking or attractive, but you see them that way, even if other people don't feel the same way. Which I'm trying to think, what was it? Oh, and Shallow Hal, which is a movie about this guy who has very shallow beliefs about women. He was brainwashed his father to look for women that are really hot looking and skinny and beautiful and all that, and he meets that famous guru, I can't remember his name, and the guy kind of does something to his mind so that he can see past the physical appearance, and he sees the inner beauty of women. And then his friend, his best friend, played by Jason Alexander, is totally freaked out by this, and he thinks he's been brainwashed because he sees the physical ugliness of women, but his friend doesn't, And a lot of these women are really, you see them, what everybody else sees, and they're overweight. They have, one of them has a unibrow, big teeth, just really physical things that people would consider ugly. And like he said, and finally his friend, finally contacts the famous guru guy. I can't remember the dude's name. It's gonna pop into my head, maybe by the end of the video. But he goes to him and finally gets him to snap his friend out of it. And his friend is all like, why'd you do this to me? I had a beautiful woman, and you took that away from me. And because he gets a girlfriend, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, who's this woman, her actual appearance is she's overweight. And he says, and he poses the question of, what if the whole world, he's like, who's the love of your life? And he says, Wonder Woman. And he's like, well, if the whole world found Wonder Woman unattractive, would you feel the same way? And he's like, no, of course not. And he's like, because I would know they would be wrong. And he's like, yeah, exactly. So that's what, to me, that's what I feel like is, even if the whole world considers them someone unattractive, like Jane and Rochester are considered unattractive by this society at the time. Yet, despite, I feel like they would still consider each other a beautiful person, even as far as look standards, because they love each other. They fall in love with each other, so it doesn't matter what they look like to the world. because it matters what they think they look like. And that's what I love about this romance. It's one of the things that I love about this is it's not based on shallow reasons. Which, granted, not to say that a love story that is based on physical, that starts out as you see someone and you find them attractive, because, let's face it, unless you are literally blind, you have the handicap of blindness, the first thing you are going to notice about a person, that what is going to draw you to a person, first thing that is going to get your attention is their looks. You're gonna see their looks. It's unavoidable. It's the first thing, unless you literally cannot physically see someone, the first thing you are going to see, and you can tell me I'm wrong all you want, but no, literally the first thing that hits you is their appearance. When you look at a person, when you walk by a person, the first thing you see is what they look like. You can't see inside a person. Unless you actually stop to talk to them, which will happen after the fact. That's why they have attraction, why they have the concept of attraction, because it's what you're attracted to. You can say, oh, that I'm not that kind of person, but no, everybody has something that attracts them. First it's physical, and then it's personality, and certain traits about a person. So yes, attractiveness does count, but then you gotta find out, do you like this person's personality? Are they a good, genuine person that you could fall in love with? But, Jane and Rochester are ideal, I think, an ideal relationship, because they don't see each other. They're considered by the society, again, they are considered unattractive. She is plain looking, she doesn't have great hair, and he's not blonde and blue-eyed and fair-skinned, and then at one point, spoiler, there's a fire, at the end of the book, his wife, Bertha Mason, sets everything on fire and almost kills herself. She kills herself, and in turn almost kills him, but he is able to escape, but his hand is all messed up, which is not, I don't think any screen adaptations have done that part. I don't know, because there are some I haven't seen, the black and white one. And like I said, I didn't finish the 1996 movie that I personally don't like because it felt too light and friendly, and this is a gothic romance, so it shouldn't be like that. He's crippled, he's scarred and everything, but Jane, she comes back and she still loves him and will still take care of him, still wants to marry him and take care of him and be there for him, despite what he looks like. And granted, probably because she's a humble person, and knows that she's not the most prettiest girl, she doesn't care about looks, because that's how, she's not considered beautiful. And then there are a lot of moments where the two of them are really, there are a lot of sexy, intimate moments in historical fiction and classics that it's very subtle. It's much more subtle and intimate. There's not that groping and the touching and stuff, except for maybe pushing someone's hair back or something, or holding hands. But, in modern movies, there's lots of sexual things, and which is great and all. I'm not shying away from that, and I'm not a prude about that, but I like how in historical fiction, it's all about the subtle things. Like brushing someone's hair out of their face, a dance where they just hold hands. One of my favorite scenes I brought up for Sound of Music is the scene when they're dancing the Lendler, and that does not involve any grinding up against each other, rubbing up against each other. It's just, holding, it's just lots of hand holding and circling around each other, and so there's no all groping and grinding up against each other. It just involves the simple gestures of hand holding and dancing around each other, but not even that sexy kind of dancing. It's very sweet and fun, but it still is it's still sexy without it being too all up in each other's grill. And this one is the same. There are moments where they are close to each other. At one point she saves his life because Bertha had already tried once before to set his room on fire to kill him, and Jane smells the fire and shows up and rescues him. And he takes her hand and he's like, he holds her hand and he's like, you saved my life. And you act like it's not a big deal, but you saved my life. I could have died. And he holds her hand and tries to get her to linger for a moment. And there's one scene in this particular movie where he's talking about how he's in love with this woman, but there's a conventional difference between the two of them and their status. And Jane doesn't realize that he's talking about her. Now, he doesn't confirm that he's talking about Jane, but he does, he says, I'm not talking about Blanche, essentially. And, he's like kind of close to her and making her a little uncomfortable because she knows it's inappropriate. And he puts this flower. This is a little thing that I don't know if it's in the book, but in this version of the story, he puts this flower on her ear, and he says things to her that are very inappropriate for the relationship they're supposed to have. And plus another thing is the lines that they say to each other when she comes back and he's trying to persuade her to stay even though he's supposedly engaged to Blanche, and that whole dialogue between the two of them, all their lines, I love all their lines. I mean, there's so many that I can't remember and I can't recite it, but there are a lot of lines and things that they say about each other to describe their feelings in the moment, some very poetic lines. This couple is just like, I love them. I mean, they're equals in so many ways, and that's one of the things I love about this one and then the other two that I've talked about, is there's equality in the relationship, and it's also like built slowly over time. It's not rushed. It's not made to be easy. I mean, at first these people don't, it's not that these two definitely do not dislike each other. It's just there's a certain, there is a divide between the two of them. There's, but it's not, there are differences, things that separate the two of them from being together. So it's not like my other favorite kind of relationship, my favorite kind of relationship, romantic relationship, which is the love-hate kind of thing. It's nothing like that. Because there's nothing between the two of them. But there are conversations that are have that same kind of ping-pong match between the two of them. They can really outwit each other and outsmart each other. And there are a couple conversations where, but it's just, so yeah, so that's my next. I don't know who I'm going to talk about next. But like I said, I might continue this through Valentine's Day. I don't know, but so I hope you liked this video, and if you did, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!